On today's episode, we have Nisal Periyapperuma joining in with us. Nisal, thanks for being on the podcast, man.
Yeah, we'll just pretend that was not the third time we tried to say my name, but anyway, we'll go from there.
So let's start off with a quick intro, man. Thanks a lot.
How do I introduce myself? I'm Nisal. I never know how to introduce myself, but right now I'm the founder and CEO of Dossiers. Before Dossiers, I've done a few things that people might know me from. I started this fact-checking and journalism operation called Watchdog, which we launched in 2019 after Easter Sunday attacks. I'm also the co-founder of Rooster, the HR and jobs platform. I also started this company called Paladin Analytics, which got acquired by Search Global. Yeah, that's me.
So you've been in tech since you were pretty young. How did that journey start out?
So I got my first computer when I was 11, grade 6. This was after I passed my scholarship and my dad got me a computer. It was like a Pentium 4.
Right.
I think I had 256 MB of RAM or 128, I can't remember. And back in the day, we didn't really have internet. There was not even dial-up. And my parents had like one rule: I can't play video games. So there was not a lot to do with like an offline computer that if you're not playing video games as an 11-year-old.
Okay.
But I also had some. So there was this guy who set up this computer. He installed a bunch of Adobe software into the computer.
Right.
So I started playing around with, I think Photoshop was the first software I played around with. I just kept playing around. I did this thing where I learned how to use the lasso tool, and I put my brother was a baby back then. He now works with me.
Okay.
I photoshopped him into a satellite, like a wing of a satellite.
Okay.
I was like, first thing, I have to find it somehow. That was like one of the things, and my dad saw this and like me playing around with these tools, sort of like learning by myself. And I don't know if anyone remember, I think they're still around. There's this place called Vijay Graphics.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he signed me up for like a Vijay graphics course.
Okay.
When I was like 11, and I was like the odd one out. This is like the Amity. There's a mall called Amity in Maharagama. There's like a Vijay graphics place inside. So every weekend I went there and I did like learn graphics stuff. And then it was like Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, and PageMaker, I think. It was like weird suit. Obviously cracked software no one can pay for.
Right.
Adobe software, especially back then.
I don't think you should be saying that on camera.
What can they do? After that, I continued that path, and my parents were very supportive, and then they kept pushing me down that line. And I remember I took 3D Max and Maya courses as well, which is a miracle running that I still can't wrap my head around the fact that I managed to run that software on my very rudimentary computer back then. Like running a render there, it somehow worked. I don't know why I can't run Chrome on my very overpowered computer right now. Don't know why. But yeah, that was me. So I was going down that path of doing graphics and 3D stuff for a while. And then when I was around, I think this is around like grade 9, 10. Maybe around grade 8 actually. Yeah, around grade 8 I started playing around with Visual Basic. Visual Basic 6, which is a great programming language because it's very, it's great because you don't necessarily learn a lot about like how programming paradigms work, how to do software engineering properly, but it gives you an interface that you connect to all of a sudden, because you can make apps by just dragging and dropping and like writing a few lines of code. You can make apps that look like the software that you're using.
Mm-hmm.
So you can drag and drop a button from the toolbar, and you can it looks like a piece of software, and you can drag and drop a tool like a text box. So, and also Visual Basic is very easy to get started in terms of creating a new project because you don't have to deal with all of the config that's required to set up a application these days. So I was playing around with Visual Basic. I kept, and also I didn't, as I mentioned, I still didn't have dial-up or any sort of internet. I used to have a.
I think you might want to explain what dial-up is because I don't
Oh
know what
god,
dial-up
okay.
is.
So dial-up is where it is essentially you connect it to the internet through your telephone line.
Okay.
Which just like modulate digital signals into the same mechanism that was bringing in like that we're using for voice.
Okay.
So that means when you're using dial-up internet, you can't make phone calls, so no one can call you back. So it was there. And speeds were like around 64 kbps, maybe even lower.
Right.
We had a Suntel line. I think Suntel is now dialogue, like the fixed line.
Okay.
Suntel was a telecom provider back then. They're not around anymore. But I didn't have that. Even when I connected, it was really expensive. So if you streamed around like 10 MB of data, that's enough to add up to like 500,000 rupees. If I'm not mistaken, I didn't really pay the bill, so I don't know how much things cost back then. But what I had was like I had a British Council membership that I went after school like a couple of days, and they had the computers that you can just download resources. They didn't let you like use a USB drive, so I don't know how I got the resources to go back home. And then there was like oh my god, I feel old now. I'm not. I swear I'm not that old. There's this newspaper. I think they're still around. It was part of the Vijay newspaper group. It's called the Pariganika Samurai.
Okay.
Is that the name? I think it's the name. So there was that. That had like bunch of tutorials in Sinhala about how to use different software. And then there was like another phase. I think this is when we were around like grade 6, 7. There was this magazine called Ray Magazine.
Okay.
So it was like a Ray Magazine came in a CD. So they got a bunch of. So each month, it like you would buy one of these magazines, and it was like every bookstore. You got a bunch of freeware, like free software that they download from the internet and burn it into a CD.
Okay.
And
was this pirated software?
not pirated, like free software.
Right.
I think they had some pirated stuff as well, but it was mostly like freeware. They had movie trailers inside the thing, and then they had different tutorials for different software packages, some programming lessons, some mini clip games. Okay. They put a bunch of mini clip games in it. That was like the fun part. Because remember, I wasn't allowed to play proper games. I had some mini clip games. So I played around with software. I tried taking some stuff. I think I properly got into programming. This was around the time when after I did my A-levels in 2011. This was when we first got Facebook. I think we got Facebook when I was in grade 9 or 10. That's when they opened it up to the entire world. And I had a Nokia 3110, like one of those phones. And they had there's this, Opera, right?
Yeah.
Opera Mini. It's like a very efficient browser, so you can, even without spending a lot of money, you can do a lot of browsing, and it was like the only thing that could run on Edge. Okay. So Facebook had a very rudimentary mobile website that was supported on these feature phones, and that was like the thing. So Facebook was very popular, and I had this Mark Zuckerberg was like the man then for anyone, and I was like, okay, I want to be like Zuckerberg, and I want to build a social network inside.
Okay. But how old were you up to this day?
So this is around like grade 10, 11. Okay. That's what, 14, 15?
Okay. Probably during your A-levels. Sorry,
O-levels, yeah. So in doing that, I learned that Facebook was running on top of PHP because you could see .php at the end of the URL whenever you open. So when you open Facebook, it was like m.facebook.com/index.php. Right. So I was like, okay, I need to, if I want to build this thing, I want to build, I'll have to build, I will learn PHP.
Okay.
So the day after my O levels, like the last exam, I went with my mom to, it was either Sarasavi or Expographics, Sarasavi Mahargam or Expographics in Bhattaram. I went there and I got this book called PHP and MySQL for Dummies.
Oh,
It's a great book. It's like very project-oriented way of uh, uh, building stuff, and it had like a uh, simple what you call simple social network that you can build, and it had like very step by step way of explaining things. And I started going through that book, and I learned quite a bit. And at that point, my dad had like a dongle, and I was using his laptop to download resources, put it into my pen drive, and then use it on my own. I still didn't have internet fully. Um, and I think that was a good thing because right now I can't really read anything on the internet because it's so much. But once you download stuff and there's not information overload, so you have to read the stuff and learn from it. That was great. I think I can. I hope I can. I try to go back to that, but it's difficult. Yeah, and I started building this social media platform. I still have the code. I'm pretty impressed by it still. The code is shit, but the product looks kind of nice. Uh, and also, I was trying to learn CSS and HTML, and there was this site called CSS Remix.
really? Okay.
It was like a portfolio of like they collected all cool looking websites around the world that was doing. This is when HTML5 and CSS3 was. It's been around for a while, but that was still going on. And people were doing cool things with CSS, so I would just like go to websites and copy their layout and try to do design, like learn how website design works, how software design works, user interfaces work, and then try to replicate these things. And I would go to like the developer tab and think, oh, they're using a cool shadow effect. How can you do it? They're using blasting. How do you do it? So like a lot of reverse engineering. So I started building this social media platform called Stampede.
Stampede.
Yeah, the name comes back later on as well. The general idea was like there's a social media platform that I wanted to build around people's locations. So your friends can put location in there. So if you're going somewhere, you can just like look up someone's address. Clearly didn't have any concerns about privacy or just like have any idea what how businesses work or anything. It's just like a cool thing to build with this cool software. And I kept building that, and then while doing that, PHP was good to get started on actually like building a product that looks tangible, but I never really learned the basics of programming. Even I don't think I fully understood what a loop was, even when I was building that until very later on, because I never actually got like the A to Z of how programs work, how like the low level stuff worked. I just knew how to build websites at that layer. And I have already always been like I've also played with a bunch of like WordPress themes, how to build like customized WordPress plugins to do stuff, and you have to learn PHP to do that. That's also a reason why I got that PHP book to learn.
Right.
What the hell am I doing? Just like copying and pasting code snippets from different themes. Just wanted to learn how things worked. But yeah, and after that, after row levels, I did pretty well in O levels. I never been good at school. I always got just enough marks to keep people up. My parents off my back. I was smart, but I was also not that dedicated. I've always just gotten bored, and I was in a very competitive class, and there was never in like the top 10 of the class. I was always like that, skirting around in like the early 20s in rank. But that was fine. But I got like 9 A's for my O levels, and I got my uncle who lives in the US. He got me an iPad.
Okay.
It was like a big gift. Like, It was like a really expensive thing, and it was like just come out, and I was like really big fan of the iPad 2. And he got me that, and it had an app called iTunes University. So it was basically open courseware, but it was an app.
Right.
So I wanted to learn programming properly. So there was this Stanford course. The course was like not the first programming unit you would take. It's like the second programming unit you would take. It was this thing called software abstractions. It was this by a professor called Julie Zelensky. I started recently watching those courses. It's really good. You should, if someone's getting into programming, you should check it out. And it went through like data structures and basics of programming. And around the same time, I found out about the IOI, the International Olympiad of Informatics, which is like the computer science version of the Math Olympiad. And I found out about it, and I emailed the Professor Gihan, who passed away a few years back. I found his email address, and he was the organizer in Sri Lanka, and I emailed him. It's like, hey, I haven't seen any activity here. Are you planning to open it up this year? And I went there, and then they started creating like a group of people around it. So the Olympiad team in Sri Lanka, there have been some really smart people. I've been fortunate enough to work with some of them. There's this guy Chaitya and Varuna, who gave me my first internship. I'll come back to that later. They were my trainers, and Chaitya, I think, has 8 medals if I'm not mistaken. He started he represented Sri Lanka since he was like 13 to like 20 until he aged out, and he won a medal every single time. And Varuna had like a gold medal, and he had been like an intern at Google.
Right.
So there's also like this guy Naina Somaratna, who's a doctor. He has a law degree. He also has a computer, I think a BIT, if I'm not mistaken. And he also runs a startup called Medical Joy Works. So all of these people were there. And the thing is, there's been like a place, remember the Sri Lankan cricket team after I don't know if you guys are cricket fans, but after 2015 it got really bad. It was and 2015, 2011, 2015, that was like the peak because everyone was like really good. So the IOI team has gone through a similar thing because all the people who were really good had just aged out at the same year, and it was like complete shit. So me, my friend Rashna, and this guy Chamot, he was a bit older than us. We were like the 3 people, and there were like a bunch of other people as well, but we went for the Olympiad. And they were like making a choice because we didn't really have a lot of time to train as well for the next competition, and the competition was in Brisbane, Australia. They didn't have a lot of time to train us. We knew how to write like basic programs, but we didn't. So Olympiad is basically, I think the structure has changed quite a bit, but it's basically 2 days. You go to a country, you get 5 hours, and you solve 3 problems. These are like algorithmic problem solving problems, so you need to apply a lot of things, and you get marks based on how many test cases you pass for a problem within given a memory and time constraints. So there are like, your program should only use up to 256 MB of RAM, and it needs to run within 1 second for 10 million records. So there are constraints, and you have to learn all of these like basic computer science algorithms to solve these kind of problems, and there's like a lot of math involved.
How old were you by that?
I think the first time I went, I was 17.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all of this, what do you call, from your basic understanding and learning how to code,
Yeah.
all like learning how to, what do you call, copy HTML sites to all of this, was all self-taught, up to date.
Yeah, until I joined the Olympiad program. Okay. I think even then, I think before I joined the Olympiad program, I think I was very happy with my skill set. I thought I was like the big shot for my age group. Right. And then I joined, I was like, holy shit, I am bad. The first year they were even on the fence about like, do we actually send these guys? Because it's going to be embarrassing. And it was embarrassing. The first year, out of 600, I scored a 0. Wow. Right. Yeah, both days I scored like 0 because I could have actually had enough skills to get like up to 20, 30 marks, I think, on the problems. But with like the time constraints and the pressure, I just like completely blacked out. Right. I didn't solve anything. Okay. And second year we got more time. I didn't do much. Do that well either. It was, I think I had 30 marks if I'm not mistaken, but that was a great improvement from 0. But I think the last year I went, it was in Kazakhstan. I think I scored around like 60.
Okay.
But I think at that point I was like, and all the people you meet at the Olympiad, you're like the US team and the Chinese team, and all the Balkan countries do great at the Olympiad. I think the maths and computer science education system's great. And you have all of these people, and there's this one guy who scored like 600 out of 600. He had already interned, he had gotten into MIT when he was like 15. He had already interned at Google and Facebook. This guy was like out of the world already. I went there, I was like, okay, I need to diversify my skill set or else I'm going to get massacred. Because I can't really compete with these guys because they're clearly geniuses. And I'm like, okay, wow, how can I diversify sort of what I do? So honestly, during my A-level period, the only thing I was concentrating was the Olympiad,
Okay.
even that I did poorly. There's still like a bit of a problem whenever you Google my name, like the 000 comes up. It's not a great look.
Oh, I think I saw it like 2 days back.
Yeah. But weirdly, people do reach out. I think I've Google Taiwan recruiters reach out because they keep hiring people who have gone through the program. So I don't think they actually checked the score, or they were just like ignoring it. Anyway, there's also like embarrassing photos of me looking like a complete. I mean, I still look like a nerd, but like ultra nerd back then. Yeah. So during the A levels, I didn't really. I don't think I wanted to. I think I was enthusiastic for the first 3 months, and I also had like undiagnosed ADHD. Now it's diagnosed. So it was just I paid a lot of attention in school for the first month or so. I did the trigonometry unit in combined maths very well, and then like got bored. And there was like a bunch of things happening at home with my brother as well. So there was a bit of a turmoil. But my parents were very understanding, and they've been always they trusted me that I'll figure out things on the fly. Um, I've been very lucky with how supportive my parents are, and then them just trusting me and my dumbass decisions all throughout. But it has worked out pretty well, I would say. So during A levels, I was doing Olympiad stuff. I was improving, not very well, but still, like I had quite a bit of leeway. So I think the Olympiad, every weekend we would meet at the Columbia University labs, and we would go through problems. And I met a bunch of people I still work with today. Pasidhu from who's now at Surge.
The
Is-
AI team, right?
Yeah, he used to be the CEO of AI team. He's one of the people I met during that. So all of these smart people you meet, I met through the program, and that was also my CS background, like CS basics of computer science and like algorithms, data structures, how to write C++ code, how to organize code, how to think, approach programs, how to think about like things like complexity of time complexity, space, all of that. I learned through that experience. So after my O levels, I still had like one paper left. I did my physics paper. For A levels, I got an A. That's right, A. It was a cakewalk. I got an S for physics because there was a logic gate question, and I scored fully on that.
Right.
And I managed to get the basic kinetics questions. I managed to pass those, and then bunch of Kana shot multiple choice questions.
Right.
And I got an S. I was pretty surprised by that, and I failed maths.
Okay.
So after my physics paper, I met a couple of people that I met at IOI. One guy was Harindu. He works at Adyen right now. Adyen is like a payment network that's based in Europe. There's my other friend Rashna, who was in the IOI team with me all 3 years. we started this services company called Stampede.
Okay.
I scrapped the idea of Stampede,
Right.
be the social media platform,
So,
but
so the first one was Stampede and the second one was
Stampede.
Stampede.
Yeah, I just took the name
Right.
because I was not really doing anything with it. And we couldn't get the Stampede domain name, so we called it such a terrible domain name. We said stmpdapps.com. We were better technical people at that point than business people. This is like a lesson of this story. But anyway, at the same time, so Varuna Chaitya, two of my trainers, they had started this company called Forest Bay, and we still work with today. And they wanted me and Roshnal to join as interns. I think our title was like Growth Hackers.
Okay.
Like Growth Hackers were like the big startup thing back in the day. So we essentially, that was like my first software engineering job. They were very patient with it. I remember Chaitya, I was supposed to do like a tiny change to the code base. I set up their website because at this point I had like a pretty decent sense of design. So I did their website and I did some of the design stuff for them. I remember I took one of the front end web application and I didn't know how to use Git.
Okay.
And I ruined the entire Git project altogether, and they were very patient with me, and Chaitya had to go restore everything.
So I'm curious. So
Yeah.
up to date, even after you got your first software engineering job,
It was not really a software engineering job. It was like a weird internship it was like a startup, right? We were doing everything.
So up to date, you had taught yourself how to code. You got yourself a book. You learned it from the internet. So I'm pretty sure all of this was through English, right? There's some element of an understanding of English in terms of maybe reading or what do you call a background that you must have had. Where did this come from? How did you have the ability to catch up on things?
I mean, I have been, yeah.
This is also the early 2000s.
Yeah. So I've been like I'm a very, I'm not from I'm from a very comfortable family. I would say like upper middle class family. We are not rich, but I lived a very rich kid lifestyle. Pure reason being my dad works in hospitality. He is like, he started as like a busboy at like a restaurant and worked his way up to being like director operations of this hotel company. So he speaks very good English.
Okay.
My mom's also an English teacher.
Okay. Oh, my mom's an English teacher.
Yeah, my mom's an English teacher. My grandma's an English teacher.
Okay.
My grandpa was an English teacher.
Wow, okay.
And also, I spent a lot of time in, so most of our holidays before tuition classes started, we would spend at the hotels because my dad was working there.
Okay.
And because my brother was also there, and I didn't mention that my older brother's autistic. So we have had, and the company my dad works for has been there for 32 years, I think, some very long time, but they've been very understanding about the situation. They're very supportive. So we spend because he has to travel a lot, we used to travel with him because otherwise my mom couldn't really take care of him, especially when he was going through periods of where he's prone to tantrums. It's very difficult for just my mom to handle. So we would just like travel with them. So that means, and even the first couple of years of our lives, we were in like a staff quarter. So we were surrounded by English and German speaking environment. I had a lot of German friends growing up that they didn't speak single English. I didn't speak German, but we would hang out the entire day and communicate through just like body language and just like gestures. We were very like best friends.
Okay.
There were like these families who used to come to these hotels every year. So I always grew up in an environment where English was spoken. And I think my mom tried to teach me English, but me being a rascal, I didn't really want to learn from my mom. And then she deferred me to my grandma.
Okay.
My grandma is like, and also my especially my dad's side of the family. They're a family of overachievers,
Okay.
all from like they all went through the public education system. So we on that side of the family we have like 3 PhDs, like doctor, engineer with an MBA, like an MBA, 2 engineers actually. Yeah. So like my dad was like the rascal of the family, but he still was doing great.
Right.
Yeah. So all of that was like my grandma's doing. He was like the iron lady of the family.
Okay.
And my granddad was a character. Let's leave it at that. So my grandma was very scared of. I still am. She's like 90 something and she's very feeble. She was in an accident 10 years ago and she's very feeble, but I'm still scared of her. So at some point I was like a well-behaved kid, but at a point I was like to my mom, I was like, I'm not doing lessons with her.
Right.
And then threw a tantrum and went away.
But you still spoke good English at the time, was it?
Not particularly. I think I didn't start reading English until I was like in grade 6. I tried to read. I have a sense that I might have been slightly dyslexic. Even now, it's very difficult for me to read. I can read nonfiction, but until I get into rhythm, I don't think it exists. Yeah, I think it's just like ADHD. But I also went to, my mom had enrolled me in this like elocution class.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I went to this place from like grade 3 to like grade 6.
Elocution is basically like private tutoring but for English, right?
Yeah. There was this like tuition class that I went to run by, I can't remember their names, but it was like mom and daughter. Mom was like this very old school English teacher who reminded me very much of my grandma.
Okay.
I was very scared of her and I didn't particularly like her. But daughter was like really nice. She was like that was like the reason I didn't throw a tantrum and leave that class.
Right.
But it was like a lot of this like filling out doing a lot of grammar notebooks sort of things, and then they had like the IWMS like English speaking tests. Do you know what IWMS is? I'm just speaking to someone off camera. So IWMS, they're still there. They do like Western music courses and English. It's a weird mix, but they have different grades. So most of the English speaking stuff is you go and you recite a poem and they ask a couple of questions and you have to answer. I think it's a very colonial British sort of establishment.
Okay.
But I did that. And in grade 5, until grade 5, I was at Thurston College. And in grade 6, because I did well in scholarship, I got a chance to go to DS. I didn't want to, but my mom was like, you should probably go. And there was like a test when, like, the first day after admissions, we were there in like the large hall, and they were like, okay, students who are interested in doing English medium, now you have to go take a test. Because there were limited ability, and my mom was like, you go take the test. And I passed the test, and we essentially, a couple of days later, they picked me up from I was in 6J classroom. I can't remember the name of the teacher, but she was really sweet. She passed away while I was still at school. She had taken me. Sorry, I'm going on a lot of time.
No, that's all good. That's all
but they plucked out of school and put us in the English medium class.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I think first couple of months was tough. They were tough because up to that point I had like English, like the unit, like you have like one period per day where you do English, but
I think
you
it's
don't.
40 minutes.
Yeah, and it was just like a teacher who teaches in secondary school, they just come to primary school and do like.
This is during English medium class?
No, this was in Thurston until grade 5,
sure.
yeah, because most of the priority at that age is on the Shishat, like the scholarship exam, and there's not like a big English component there. And grade 6, we had, and I was doing, and we got dragged, like put into the deep end.
Okay.
And I had to sort of like learn on the fly, but it was not really English speaking, it was mostly like writing, right? I think around grade 8, my mom's a public school English teacher, so she doesn't make a. She's retired now. She still now teaches at a private school near a place. She loves teaching. Uh, but she didn't make being a private, like a public school teacher, you don't make a lot of money. But since my dad worked in private sector, she mainly used her salary for education stuff for us. So she essentially put like every 3 months she would put her entire salary and she signed me up for British Council classes.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah,
Was British Council famous at the time? And when was this?
This is 2008, I think. That was the first time I joined in. Um, yeah, it was like a big thing. Even then, they didn't have enough spots, so you have to take an exam and they assign you, and there's like a waiting list, all of that. And for me, I think I was more interested in that because they have like a component that they show a movie throughout the term.
Oh, okay.
Right.
That's very cool.
So they break it down into episodes, sort of, and then it's like a comprehension thing. So you learn, like you listening comprehension, and you have to, in addition to watching the movie, you have to fill out like a form. And the British Council Library was also there. It was like one of my favorite places.
Right.
Because it was, I think it's a bit run down now, but it was really cool back then. It was really fun. That they had beanbags. That was like the first place in Sri Lanka had seen beanbags, and you could just like.
And in 2008, that's fancy.
Yeah. It used to be very fancy. That I go hang out there. There were like reading competitions where if you read like, you could borrow up to like 4 books a time, and there was like a reading, like a challenge. And you have to go prove that the person at the library would ask you questions from the book, so you have to answer the questions to prove that you have read the book. So that's how I think that was how I learned how to speak English, and I don't think I appreciated it until it was like grade 10. And even my parents tried to do the thing where they speak to us in English at home, and we just like brush it off. Like,
how did that go?
Not very well. They tried to incentivize us by giving us pocket money for speaking in English. I was like,
okay.
I don't think I never really appreciated it.
Did you feel awkward? Because I think I've gone through this too.
Yeah, I think that was it. It was just like
you can feel the fact that they're trying.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't want to do this.
and also it just socially it was still like it's an oddball thing, right? Even in DS there were like cliques. Even in the English medium classes there were like the people who were from predominantly well-to-do, like people who are like more Colombo-based, because I was from like Mahargam area, and there's like people who were, it's like a very diverse mix of people in my class from different ethnic backgrounds, different religious background, different like we have people who are from Anuradhapura, we had people who were just like right down the road. So it was a nice mix of people, but it always felt kind of pretentious if we spoke English outside of school. And like even in school, like even in the English medium class, if we spoke English outside of like a subject,
okay,
it felt a bit pretentious.
Were you considered like a posh person?
No, I was not.
No, but like, did people consider you to be a posh person?
Posh person if you spoke in English.
Yeah.
But there were like some people who were like posh and that sort of
actually.
That just like embrace that fact.
I think we still have the problem today as well, right?
Yeah. But in the friend group I was on, like everyone spoke very good English. Everyone was very good academically, but at the same time, it was like spoken English. You're a bit of a outcast. But I think things slightly started changing after like O levels, where people started speaking more in English. Sorry. Yeah, that's how I went. Yeah, that's how it went. And
how did you end up like co-founding like other companies after you're working? And while I think the like 3 main companies that you built, which is
I mean, it was just like stumbling along, right? I think early 20s and late teens, you have a lot of hubris, which is great. You don't really see like the big picture of anything. Like anything seems possible. At least for me, there are like a group of people who feel that way, and I think there are a group of people who feel they need permission to do everything.
Sure.
Because of like my parents being really supportive to a fault at points. But I had like the confidence of like I can actually do things, and also people were really supportive. For an example, like the Stampede, the company. So me, Roshnal, and Harinder, we started this company called Stampede. And during that time, so I was the president of the computer society in school. I just like randomly reached out to this guy on Facebook who was an old boy, and he was working at IdeaMart. IdeaMart was promoting the platform heavily during that time. Shopras. He now works for AWS. I reached out to him, was like, hey, we are doing the computer day event. Do you guys want to sponsor us? And they just like, him and Prashant, he was also an old, he was his boss, Shopras, was his boss. And they gave me like 100,000 rupees.
Right.
But just like showing up in school uniform, I walked all the way from DS2. They had the offices on the Pinnacle building. I think it was the Pinnacle building back then.
Okay.
Around here. And then they gave us that, and then we kept in touch. And I messaged him on Facebook again. I was like, hey, we started a software not a dev shop, we software consulting firm. Software consulting firm. Let me know if you have any projects. And they connected us with this client who wanted to build an IdeaMart app around stock advising. The contract value for this was 50,000 rupees.
Right.
That was a lot of money for us back then.
Yeah.
The entire amount went to registering Stampede as a private limited company.
Oh shit. Okay.
And at some point, we went to the company register in Marathon, and they were like, yeah, you're missing 500 rupees. So we had to go find 500 rupees.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wait, did it cost you 50,000 rupees?
Yeah, it was a bit more expensive back then. And back then we didn't have like simple books of people who were automating that process.
Did you do that on your own like that?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a bit annoying.
Right.
So during that time we created like a bunch of online stuff. So that was our first project. We delivered this, we built this app, like the front end, we built like this very cool admin panel actually. We went above board with it. And then the mobile app for them to update stock data, all of it. And we had some social media presence, and we were trying to do this like products. We were very technical people. We built some interesting things technically, but we had zero business sense. We didn't know how to figure out if something works. We didn't know how to sort of prototype and test the market. We didn't know how to sell. And we had like an online listing, and this guy reached out to us like a cold email. This guy's name was Dilshan Katriaraji.
Okay.
He was a CTO of this company called EQWorks, and he wanted to do this. He started a company called Half-Life, so he wanted to do a bunch of. He was based in Canada. He was like me. He was like he started like all of us. He started programming very young. And then he went to college in Canada and somehow ended up being CTO of this like publicly traded company right out of college.
Right.
It was a weird story.
I think I met him maybe like 6
Yeah.
months ago.
So he's very interesting, and he was building some interesting projects, and that was like I think that was our second experience in building real applications.
Okay.
One of the first things that we were building was like I remember we met at Commons.
Oh.
It was like very fancy for us back then. And
the coffee place, right?
yeah. And then we had this idea of creating like a messenger app called Moko for Sri Lanka. And the hook was, this was when Helakuru had a terrible, like the Vijay Kesari keyboard. So it was really hard to type. And he wanted to build a better keyboard. So I came up with this idea. I think it's now the mechanism that's been used at like the Google keyboards and stuff, where the layer would be consonants, like not kaka, but ka, ga, ka, ja, that. And when you long press it, you get the Mahapra and Sanyaka stuff. And the top row would be vowels like a. When you hard press it, there's a.
Right.
And then you have that. And whenever you press a consonant, because you don't have a consonant like vowel pass like after a consonant, so all the vowels will change to like the modified version of it. So if you press ka,
Okay.
the top layer would change to ka, ki, ku, ke.
Right.
Yeah. So that was like our first design. We came up with it, and he was pretty happy with our work. And then we started working together on more and more things. One very interesting that we were building was this product called Addition.
Okay.
So Addition was supposed to be this.
It's like addition plus something.
No, adhesion, like
Addition.
like adhesive.
Correct.
Addition, yeah.
Okay, sure.
It was essentially a plugin that publishers can put on their website,
Okay.
and we track people using third-party cookies to see what they read inside the network. So we can. One is you have recommendations on the site, because recommendations were kind of hard to build.
Okay.
So we want like Yahoo was one of the first
Oh, nice.
customers on there. And so Yahoo, we would scrape the Yahoo website, and whenever someone goes, we look at their history a little bit and then serve them an ad.
Right.
And then throughout, once we have this network, so we have the recommendations, and sometimes we give you a sponsored ad. So there was like Unilever, and at some point we ran, I think the biggest spike. I realized how much traffic, how many people read gossip sites in Sri Lanka here, because at one point we onboarded Gossip Lanka and we had to scale up the entire system because there were like 2 million hits
Right.
on like 2 million pings a day on the recommendation engine. So we had to
This
scale
was
it.
in 2000?
2008, 2015, 2014, 15, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
2 million hits on the website in 2015.
Yeah, this is, Gossip Lanka was big. I think still is, unfortunately. But and I think it was a very interesting idea, and this is like Dilshan's what he was doing at EQ Works as well. So he was trying to replicate that model, and we learned a lot about how the ad networks work, like how whenever you open up a website, there's like an auction happening for attention. So people are like, okay, for this impression, here's a profile of this person. There are multiple people bidding on pricing. For this person of this profile, we'll bid you like $0.001 dollar. It changes, right? So we built a replica of that here. That was like a great experience. So while this is happening, I think I was like 20, 19, 20. I was pretending to do second shy in A-levels.
Okay.
Signed up, didn't show up. I was just buying some time from my parents.
Okay.
Because they were like, yeah, you're doing this company stuff, cool, but you should probably have a paper qualifications. And
I hear this all the time.
yeah, Roshnal left to Germany to do his degree. Harinder went to Netherlands, and I was like, yeah, all of my friends, like, and those are people I was close to at that time, and my other friend Tejan, he's already left. So I was like, okay, most of my close friends have left. Maybe I should also consider. And at the time, I was also doing a bunch of freelance gigs because it was a great time because I had enough programming skills, and I spoke, it was almost like the way I speak at the beginning was like put on a little bit.
What do you mean put on?
Like the accent, sort of back in the day, I was trying to mimic something.
Ah, okay, sure. Like an
Because-
American or British.
Yeah, there's like a vague, nondescript thing that I was actively doing at the beginning, because one thing you don't want to, this is rather unfortunate, but it's the system we're in. If you sort of speak, if you're doing freelance gigs online, you don't want to get bucketed with the Indian subcontinent people. Because if you go to Upwork and all of these platforms, you're competing on price. You're going to be burned out, you're going to be doing a lot of gigs, and you're not going to be making a lot of money. If you can differentiate yourself at an interview and how you speak, and you're like, don't have the typical sort of accent that like Sri Lankans and Indians have, it gives you an edge.
Right.
Which is pretty unfortunate because there were a lot more smarter people who would have deserved that sort of attention, but I game the system a little bit.
So you're
It's like
telling that having a notch above in terms of English speaking skills help?
Yeah, a lot.
Okay.
And at the same time, this was around like the time when Uber was like the big thing in the thing, and there was like a second startup, Fervor, and this was like zero interest rate era. Everyone and their dog was creating an app.
Why do you think that was the case? Like, why? Okay, say for
Yeah.
example, I am a freelancer that cannot speak really good English, but I'm pretty technically maybe qualified, or I can write really, really good code or build projects. Like, why wouldn't I be getting it over somebody who's maybe pretty bad at tech but speaks really good English and presents well? Like, why is that the case?
I think people are pretty prejudiced,
Okay.
especially if you're like a lot of people hiring in the US, they will make that distinction, right? And not even that, it's partly if you're speaking, and hope things are changing, but it also, I think, a lot of people who can speak English, can write English, can read English very well, they don't have the same level of confidence. And one thing you notice very early on is like, if you just go with whatever someone tells you, especially I think I've noticed with like people that I've worked with in the past, they've improved, but there's like a tendency to say go with whatever the client says, especially when it's a client who is from like the US or like someone from, for lack of a better word, first world, right? You get a big advantage if you step up and say, hey, the thing you're trying to do, I don't think that's going to work. Here's a better way to do it. Because that's part of your job, right? It doesn't matter what job you're in, you're coming in as an expert, and part of your job is not to just do whatever you've been told. You're just like having a point of view on something, and standing your ground helps a lot. But if you're not really, most people can communicate that if that conversation was happening in single or over text. But if it's happening face to face, people get sort of, they get scared. So even at like Paladin, we had really smart people that we were working with. They had excellent English writing and reading skills. They speak very good English as well. But whenever sometimes they're afraid to talk to clients directly, so they would just like during calls just like ping me on the side saying, instead of that, should we say that? But
So what's the difference there? Like, say if somebody can speak good English
yeah,
and that confidence, what's that difference there?
I think it's just like a matter of practice, right?
Right.
When you're in an environment where you're constantly forced to speak in English, you pick up nuances more than anything. You get if I didn't like if you listen to this conversation from beginning to end, you can see like I would have made so many grammatical mistakes during this conversation. Few that I noticed, but that's fine if you're like if you listen to like a native English speaker, they make grammatical mistakes and they say things that are grammatically incorrect, but you don't really care because that's your first language. No one's going to judge you because this is like a not to pull the colonizer thing, but this is like a class marker here. If you speak like we judge people, I think Sri Lankans are harsher on Sri Lankans when it comes to speaking English than anyone else. So, like the way you pronounce certain things, the way you make certain like, if you make a small grammatical error, they will judge you. But if you speak with a certain level of like confidence and gravitas, they just like, let it pass because it's like it's clearly your first language, so you can't really judge that. It's almost like when you're speaking Sinhalese, but you just like butcher the language left, right, and center, and no one gives a shit. But when it comes to English, because we're taught in like a written first, speak later sort of a situation, and a lot of people who don't go to like a very few select, either go to a private school or very few select elite public schools in Colombo, they don't really get the opportunity to, or in Kandy, they don't really get the opportunity to practice. Yeah, we should all be a little less. Yeah, people are kind of douchebag, like bit too douchebaggish about this, but I think things are changing for the better.
Maybe it should probably be a little bit less judgy towards people who are trying to speak.
And also, if you have the advantage, just like open your door up to other people who like are smart,
And I don't think it's something that we should be judging because it's just
It's also a language. If you
Yeah.
can communicate in it, it's fine. It's almost like if I try to learn Spanish and I go like somewhere else and then try to speak Spanish if someone makes fun of me. I remember I took like I did like half an economics degree.
Okay.
It's a tangent. But I took like, in that degree, I took like a Spanish unit and I did some Duolingo as well. I went to Spain and tried to speak Spanish to people and they were like very butchering the language. It didn't make any sense, but they were like still sort of still supportive.
Okay.
They were indulging me in the conversation and they were trying to help me like fix it because they're like, oh, this person's trying to speak my language. They're making an active effort rather than being like they're trying to learn my language, which is what learning a new language should be.
I think that supportiveness towards that learning curve really helps in terms
Yeah.
of like keeping up with motivation and like figuring out how to
Yeah.
speak better.
Even like the elocution class that I went to when I was a young kid, the reason I didn't like it was like a very like old school punishment and judgment sort of an environment. Whenever you like pronounce something wrong, they would just like not correct you in like a small way. It was always like the stick mode of English education, like the old school British way of teaching, which is not really helpful if you like. You're just making people more self-conscious, so they don't really try. But when you give people the opportunity, they do great things. Like people that I'm talking about, they're doing amazing things. They have started their own companies. They work with clients all over the world, and it's just giving someone the confidence that they can do it. Because this is also like sorry, I'm going on tangents.
No, it's okay.
This is like a bit of a rant. One thing that really pisses me off. How do I say this without getting into trouble? With the quote unquote, it's fine. We can just keep going.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, off the screen, one of the cameras are going off battery, but it's fine.
Don't worry, there's 3 batteries on.
Yeah, okay. So, like the problem with the Sinhala Buddhist first education system is that it gives an unfair advantage to a select group of people who grew up in Colombo, who go to a specific set of schools because they can learn English no matter where.
I think that's going to piss a lot of people off, but I think that's
But the thing is, I think you should learn Sinhala. You should learn Sinhala literature. I miraculously have a A for Sinhala and Sinhala literature at O levels. It was very difficult. But the thing is, you learn this with like meeting a lot of like friends from Europe that I have. They speak like 4 or 5 different languages. Learning another language doesn't mean you forget the first language that you have. It just gives you a new way of thinking about things. It helps like me knowing Sinhala helps me with how I approach problems in a different way because it's a complete different language structure. These are connections that you make in the brain. Like every time you learn a new language, very terrible at learning languages. I've tried, but I didn't have the discipline to do it. It gives you like new tools to learn by not, and at the same time, we have taken people through single medium from grade 1 to grade 13 and doing like one period of English poorly done for all of this time. And if they have if they're fortunate enough to go to university, and then you have to like start learning in English, that's like such a people I went to school with had a massive, because we learned in English medium, had a massive leg up over everyone in college because they already knew how to learn in English and read in English. Just the other approach that you can take is like take all the world's knowledge and translate it in Sinhala and Tamil. Tamil it's a bit easier because there's a larger population, but like there are 16, 17 million Sinhala speakers, you can't really translate it. The alternative is you just give people a proper education and teach them in English so you can access knowledge that's been produced by 2 billion people around the world. how we got the language is a bit unfortunate through colonization. But
Right.
use it through, you play the card, you use the cards you have.
I mean, think of this, right? We're having this conversation in this room right now. You're sharing your ideas, I'm sharing my ideas. We're having this conversation where it's entirely done in English, and we perfectly understand each other in terms of what we're trying to express. But
Yeah. So even us, you grew up in a family with an English teacher.
yes, and I went to an English speaking school as well. So that
Yeah, English speaking school, and also you had access to, like, you watch English
Yeah.
entertainment, so that's how you pick up the language.
Yes.
I think it's also like there's like a group of people, especially in Colombo, who are there in those positions because not that they're particularly smart.
No.
Some of them are pretty dumb. They get these positions because they speak English in a certain manner. And there are people who are from different environments, are really smart, who have worked really hard where they are, and they don't get the same opportunities because of how well they speak English, just like how they speak English. It's unfortunate, but hopefully things are changing. I see things changing because you realize these people, also we don't have the same old school corporate structures anymore, and more people are starting their own thing, and industries that are not really run by incumbents. So fingers crossed.
You've built multiple companies, including Rooster, Paladin, Watchdog. Tell us a little bit about that and what you're currently working on as well.
So Watchdog was a weird thing. So I met Barnacle when we were doing the paperwork, like some of the paperwork for the company that I was talking about earlier, Stampede, where we were going to register of companies by ourselves, and we found about simple books.
Okay.
So I went to meet Abid at the Kelsey offices.
Right.
Now it has come full circle.
Right.
This was in 2017. I think this is right before I went for college.
Okay.
Before we went to college, we had done any of our reporting, so I went to Simple Books like, hey, Abid, help us.
Okay.
And I ran into Barnacle, and then I spoke to him. Seems like an interesting chap, and I think I started following him on Instagram, and I just like kept in touch. And in 2018, I dropped out of uni and came back here. And I kept running into him at one of the cafes here. And we were like, we had a conversation. And we were like, okay, there's something here. And we should do something together, but we didn't know what. I think he offered me a job at Surge. They didn't really have an engineering team at the time. But at that point, I was working for this startup that I was like the first employee of, based on Sydney, and I was still working for them remotely, and I was making a lot of money. And I was like, yeah, I'm making good money. I have pretty good work-life balance. I don't see joining right now. And we were still having conversations. I think there was one project that went nowhere. A couple of people that didn't really work out. And after the Easter Sunday attacks went off, like in 2019, I got a call from a couple of days later. I got a call from Barnacle because there was like social media bans and a lot of stuff. And Barnacle was actually there at two of the bombs. This was one at Shangri-La and one at like Cinnamon Grand. Okay. So he was at Shangri-La, bombs went off. He was going for a meeting, bombs went off. He got the traps like flying across, and then he went to he recorded like an Instagram video because it's Barnacle. He's always posting something on Instagram. And then he walked across to Cinnamon Grand thinking it was going to be safe, and then it was like the second bomb went off, so it was like a whole thing. And we met at, it was like, hey, can we meet? So we met at Coco Veranda at Vote Place. I think it's closed now, no?
I think they moved it.
They moved, okay. We met there. I was like, hey, so there's a lot of rumors and stuff. It's getting a bit unsafe. Can we build like a simple app where we can actually fact check things and put it out? So we got to working. A couple of people, Raghu, Safra. We brought in a bunch of people, and they had a whole army of volunteers who were doing the checking and the translation, and we started building the app. We managed to get the app into the Play Store within like 24 hours.
Wow.
It's very, very hacky. We had like a Google Sheet because we didn't have time to build any of the application or anything. But Google Sheet with restrictions on what fields someone can edit. And then we saved it to like a 5 days thing and then had the app. And to our surprise, it went really viral and like within the first week because there was a social media ban, people were using VPNs to get on social media. And there were rumors about the water supply being poisoned, all of those things. And we put out this app. During the first week, I think we had around 40,000 users using the app.
Wow.
Whenever we started push notifications, we had around 15,000 people opening the app within an hour, which is a bit insane. And that was that. And at that point, I was like, okay, wanted to quit my job. I had some savings, so I was like, okay. I wasn't really happy. Like the work situation was great. But the problem was when you're working remotely, I had to rebuild my friend circles again because most of the people I was friends with had left. And I wasn't super close with a lot of people I went to school with. So I had to sort of build the friend circle from scratch and I was feeling a bit all over the place in terms of figuring out life because early 20s are messy. This was like, okay, this gives me purpose. Let me have enough savings. Let me put some of it to this and figure out what I can do. And for the first year, we had no business model. One thing I was actively fighting with people was like, we're never going to put ads on it.
Right.
The moment you put ads, it's going to be a problem. So we ran for like a year. We could figure out a business model, and Watchdog was still running. Watchdog was so Paladin Analytics was registered for Watchdog.
Okay.
At some point, Barnack and I met. Surge at the time had I think 4 or 5 engineers in-house, but they didn't have anyone as a CTO. So it was like a bunch of people who felt a little bit neglected because they were part of a digital marketing agency and they were just maintaining a few products. So Barnack, Dave and I, we sort of moved we had an agreement with Didanja. We moved Watchdog out of Paladin. It was like an independent thing. We didn't know what to do with it. It was just there. We were just running the fact checking as we went. So it's like 2019, the bombs happened, the elections happened. We didn't know the COVID was going to happen. It was like, right, yeah, storm after storm.
Right.
Weird couple of years. So Paladin, we converted that into a services business. And Surge had some projects that they transferred over to us. Dave wanted to do a revamp of the publisher. Dave Chesney was one of our co-founders. He wanted to do a revamp of his product, Publisher Rocket. So we started hiring some people and building out Paladin. Started as a dev job. First couple of months we took over the second floor of the Rajagiri research office. It was the same team. Okay. It was on paper, 2 separate companies, but on the same, working on the same building, and some of the stuff was the same people, founders, kind of common. It was a weird separation. But 2 months in, we were getting into a nice rhythm. Fucking COVID happens. At the beginning, when we were starting, when we kicked off in 2020 January, and COVID was still picking up, and then March we all went into lockdown. So we were the team was just starting to get to know each other and get comfortable with each other. And it's now remote work. I was not doing great mentally, but didn't really have a lot of choices because what else can you do when you're locked in your house the entire time? We fully went into work mode and we kept building. And inside we started building Rooster to help with our own hiring, and at the same time Surge was expanding, so they were essentially tracking things inside the Gmail and Google Sheets, and they were not replying to candidates on time, so it was a problem. So we built a simple ATS. We didn't even know what ATS was at that point. We found out about Greenhouse, and it was stupidly expensive. We started building this thing internally, and then it took off because we had network effects built in. Because whenever you post a job, there's like a logo at the bottom, and people see the job opening and they started creating profiles. And and at some point I was like, okay, let's spin this off into a different company, and Rooster sort of came about. And inside Paladin, we had some interesting products that we built. We built a product called Atticus, just like selling to the same audience that Dave had built with Publisher Rocket. We built like a full-on. It's still the most impressive piece of software I've built. It's basically everything from a word editor to theming to publishing your book on all platforms. It was very. I can't believe we managed to pull that off. But I guess that's what happens when you lock people in their houses for like 2 years and nothing to do.
Right.
That happened. And around that same time in 2021, for Watchdog, at some point, early COVID, we kept it running, but at some point we were like, I think one thing that was the camel that broke, no, the feather that broke the camel's back. Is that the same?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Sorry, this is like a boomer reference. I'm a boomer in the current. I'm a boomer to your generation. Okay. So there was like this story about a parody site putting a thing saying COVID started with someone having sex with a bat.
Okay.
And there was like a screenshot on my phone, me saying someone said, I can't believe I had to fact check the bat fucking story. I think after that I was like, I can't keep telling people, we can't keep telling people that not to drink bleach. This is not effective. And the problem with the early Watchdog fact checking is that to fact check, you have to pay attention to the news cycle. Nothing ruins your mental health more than paying attention to the news cycle. Because everything is relevant for like a day. And that information is completely useless. And most of the time, what people want us to fact check is just complete useless things. It doesn't matter if it's true or false. Completely mundane.
Okay.
So we had spoke to Yuda, and we had like a vision. We said, okay, let's take a hiatus because we're burned out. We have day jobs, and we are not making we are running it with our savings. So it's and we don't necessarily believe in what we're doing. And most of the things that we actively disagreed with some of our earlier principles at that point because we learned throughout doing process, this is not actually helpful. This might be actually doing more harm.
Right.
So we had this idea. I was like, okay, if we're doing properly, here's what we want to do. Instead of just fact checking, we want to build like a proper journalism outlet, but not in a way that we wouldn't. Our parameter is we wouldn't cover anything that someone else would cover and do a better job. So that means if you're relying on the advertising revenue as a news publisher, you need to write the break-in story. You have to get people's eyeballs and go where people care about. You can't really do long analysis because no one's going to read it. During this time, I kept getting emails from this guy called James Wright from an organization called OCCRP. So he was researching me in all of these places. I was like, okay, nice try. You're trying to fish me. Cool. You want to give us money. James Wright, the most generic American sounding name possible. I was like, cool. And I think they found a mutual connection that we had. I was like, okay, this guy is legit. And hey, we want to give you a bunch of money. We like the stuff you have done. If we gave you a giant pot of money, I think the first offer they made was $420,000, which was enough for us to run for 5 years. But because how stupid NGO funding is, you have a time period because it's also a sub-grantee, right? If they have to spend the money that they get from the grantee within a specific period of time. If they return money, they won't get the money next year. It's a bit of a misaligned incentive system. With that money, we could have run for 5 years easily and done a great job. But unfortunately, we had to spend that within a year. We bargained it down to $340,000. I think that was the final amount. We were okay, can you give us less money? Can you give us more time? Trying to negotiate it down. Just a weird position to be in, right? You're just negotiating
I
down.
agree.
Yeah. So we kicked off in 2022. So our plan was we have a year. We bring in all the people that we want to work with. We tell them that don't quit stuff you're doing on the side because we can't really guarantee your job security after this year. We don't know what's going to happen, but we can do an excellent job and move forward. The first article we put on Watchdog there was this thing called did we call it what the fuck is happening with the Sri Lankan economy? I think we did. I don't know if we censored it. This was in 2022 Feb.
Okay.
The second article we wrote was about Sri Lanka's debt problem. This is the economist Umesh Moramudali.
Okay.
Really smart guy. He was in our team. And like a week after we published that article, we went to a default.
Wow.
So everything started falling apart. Like the protests started happening, and I think we still, because at that point the conversation was about how like we were stuck in the Chinese debt trap. That's why we are getting into default. But Umesh essentially RTI is like request for information, so you can get right to information act. So you can ask government agencies for information, and they are legally bound to reply to you.
Right.
So you can get information from any government organization. Sometimes they can refuse, but you can appeal the request. So he got all of our debt compositions. He published like what are the loans that we have, what are the interest rates, what are the terms. So I think we were the reason the conversation switched from Chinese loans to like international sovereign bonds. Then we built then there was the protest, and we built a protest tracker that tracked crowdsourced so many protests around the country, because at that point the government was like, yeah, this is the Columbus and the place is protesting, and then we mapped out all throughout the country where that's coming from. We did like a big article on the attack on Gota Gogama the day after. Remember when people started beating up protesters and that turned a bit violent? We did like a map of events and like found people who were attacking peaceful protesters and put it out. So we got like a lot of attention during that time. Very unfortunate or great timing, I don't know whichever it is, but we were able to do so many things during that time. And we built a bunch of interactive tools as well. One thing we built was like when inflation was stupidly high, that inflation was changing like week over week, and people couldn't grasp the concept of like their food prices changing. We built this thing called it's the inflation tracker. It basically you can build a meal. So we had a bunch of recipes for like if you're making a chicken curry, this is how the price of a chicken curry would have changed since beginning of this year, because inflation was going really high, food prices were changing very rapidly. There was another thing that was part of our transport piece, was like basically based on average household income in Sri Lanka in different province, you can select a type of vehicle, and this is how many years without interest, without any loans, how many years of household income will take for you to afford this vehicle. Wow. So those kind of things that explains certain things.
These are like micro tools under.
Because we were a very technical team, and we were able to do things that other news outlets weren't really able to do. And we also did things like we built this thing called Elixir. I realized you worked on it at some point.
I can read it. Yes.
So Elixir was something that I built, locking myself in a room for like 2 days because I got mad at this guy. Should I name him? It's fine. It was Milinda Rajapaksha. Sorry if you're listening to it. You were making the claim that there are no medical shortages when people were putting, doctors were putting social media posts begging people to give them like catheters and all of these things. So we a way to fact check, we built this database, and then it was like, okay, there's a way of on tracking, and we made it open source. At some point, Lanka Software Foundation took over it, and then they did a project with Red Cross.
Yes.
I don't think it's active anymore, but they made it like a donation tracking system. So we saw ourselves as like weird prototypers that made things and made it open source, and also gave context. So our thing was like, our main problem that we saw in the media outlet is like, you report events, but events don't make sense if you don't know what came before.
Right.
So we wanted to build up what came before, and what came before will be valid for the next 10, 15 years. Because every time someone makes a change, if you're a journalist covering agriculture policy,
Right.
you can refer back to our article, so you don't have to write the entire context from scratch.
Right.
Right? So that's what we had in mind, and that's one way we managed to build all of this. In doing so, we kind of got into the trap of NGO funding is a weird game. We raised some more in funding from GIZ and USAID.
Right.
GIZ project, we did some interesting things. We built a replica of Colombo inside this game called City Skylines. Have you played the game? Yeah. It's on GitHub. You should check it out. It's a insane project. There was like another project where we mapped out Sri Lanka's deforestation by taking a bunch of satellite imagery and seeing how urbanization is happening. We built this open source agriculture sensor kit. So it's essentially like a weird research lab that we had. So we had some money, and we were essentially throwing things at the wall to see what works. And at some point, you realize whenever you have NGO funding, it's great because, in one sense, you kind of get funding to do interesting things that wouldn't really have commercial benefits right there. But the other part is whenever involves a lot of report writing and timesheets. There are so many timesheets, like everything. You have to track hours you work on the thing, and then you have to report it. It's like a lot of paperwork. At some point, we were like, we hate it. Like the actual work is not as much.
Okay.
We had some. So while we were doing this, there was one project that we actually never launched inside Watchdog, which is supposed to be one of our more ambitious projects. It was this thing called the government hierarchy map.
Okay.
So we, as part of Watchdog, we ended up sending a lot of RTIs. The bigger RTI is the Right to Information Act.
Okay. Right.
So basically, you can query any government entity for information as a private citizen, and they are supposed to reply to you within a certain period of time and acknowledge it. And then, if they have the data, they're supposed to share it with you.
Right.
It works pretty well. From my experience, it works pretty well. We have done things like RTI, the CID, for people who were held under the Protection of Terrorism Act.
Right.
They send you like a breakdown of things. They did it by delivering the letters by hand, which is not really necessary, but it's almost like an intimidation tactic. Yeah. But they adhere to the regulations. So one of the main problems we had was like we didn't know for certain things where the data was and where to RTI, because if you, at that point, one example we used, like there was like Ministry of Agriculture, there was Ministry of, I'm butchering the names, but just general gist of it. Ministry of Export Crops, which was different, and then there was Ministry of Green Chili, Onions, and there was like 3 different bodies that were dealing with different parts of agriculture, because that's what like the previous governments did was, right, basically to keep people happy, they want to give them a ministerial portfolio. So you created ministerial portfolios that didn't particularly make sense, just to keep people happy.
Okay.
That's how we maintain alliances, right? So in doing so, to figure out where to RTI for data, we built this thing. This is pre-AI as in like LLMs. This is still the era of like ChatGPT 3.
Okay.
Not ChatGPT 3, GPT 3. You could still access it through the API, but it was not mainstream and it was not great. It's very terrible. We had a couple of people who were a bit insane. They went and mapped together this thing called like the government hierarchy map. Everywhere, and it showed all the entities, how they're connected. So if you take Ministry of Agriculture, the departments that's under it.
This is built on Obsidian, right?
Yeah, we built on Obsidian, yeah. And then we were building it, we were trying to put it online, but for some, I think we were tackling too many things, and at some point we were, as an organization, a bit burnt out by that point.
Right.
Because it was hellish for the 2022 period, and a lot of people, staff members that we had, they were leaving the country as well for further studies, and then we had a lot of like people coming in, people going. It was a term, like a fever dream of a couple of years. So that project never went public, but someone saw it and it was like, hey, this brings us to what we're doing right now. and we wanted to at some point switch more over to like a commercial product as well. We were throwing things and see what's a more sustainable business model that we don't really have to keep writing fund proposals and waiting,
Right.
just going back and forth. We had some projects lined up for this year. One project we had almost completed
Okay.
before the USAID
Right.
funding stopped.
Right.
And there was one that was ready to go live any day now, and we were supposed to hire people, and we were glad that it went away at that time, because otherwise we would have already hired people and have to let people go.
Right.
So someone saw the government hierarchy and was like, hey, we have to do checks for politically exposed persons when we onboard customers for like banking and finance. Do you guys have a database can we use?
Okay.
And then we started talking to them and trying to figure out like what's the actual requirement, other than just saying, oh, database. And then we started designing this thing. It was a slow grind of talking to people. Reading a lot of regulations around anti-money laundering regulations and the requirements, understanding the landscape. And we built this company called Dossiers. We raised a pre-seed round, and we have a good set of early customers now, and we are consistently building and building and building. We have some traction now.
Who came up with the name Dossiers? That's like one of the cool. It's like you guys end up having like all the cool names. What was Stampede, Rooster, Watchdog. It's like where do you get the names from, man?
Watchdog was Barnaca's idea.
Okay.
Rooster was also Barnaca's idea.
Okay.
I can't remember what the reason for Rooster was. There's a sideline. I'm not gonna tell that to the public. It's a bit of a joke. But on the dossiers, it was like the idea of like have you heard of like the CIA dossiers?
Yeah.
It's basically like during the Cold War, I think they still do it. They keep files on people with like basically information on them. Some of them are public, like because they like from the things from the 70s they make public after like things are declassified.
Right.
So we wanted to sort of push into that aesthetic of here's a file on someone, and here are all the things that they're involved in. So when you're onboarding customers, you know what your risk levels are. And these are things that are regulated by the central bank. And if you don't follow certain requirements, you get fined. And sometimes, if you're a repeat offender, you get sometimes. This hasn't happened in Sri Lanka, but they might take your banking license. Has happened in other places.
Right.
So HSBC has gotten, not here, but HSBC globally, I think they got hit with like $500 million in fines. The biggest one is Binance. They got hit with $2.25 billion by the US government for not having proper KYC and all of that. So that's the space we're building in. Watchdog, as of now, is on a hiatus.
Okay.
We had a roadmap when we started in 2022, the new iteration. We managed to get everything done. One topic we didn't cover well is education. Everything else in the pipeline is covered. You can still refer to the website and see all the things that we have done. It'll be relevant for the next 10 years. It's been very interesting, but also working on Watchdog, we were jumping between so many cool ideas back and forth, but now we are focused on making this thing work. But our core mission hasn't really changed. We just want to make government and the state a lot more accountable to the people. And we see dossiers as a way to enforce it. That means by having all of these data sets that are a lot more detailed than what's already there, and having these workflows built in to do these kind of screenings, we just make sure that if you have access to state money, if you try to do something shady with the money, it gets to get flagged at the bank level very early on, so you can't really sneak it off to someone and get rid of the money, because recovering stolen money is almost impossible. And on the other side, you have people who deal with like organized crime and all of those things. There's none of these things actually happen. The busts don't really happen at like street level, like street level as in like not random searches and
Sure.
stuff like that. It's intelligence. Part of it is like how they hide assets and how money flow
Right.
works. So that's where we see. So we see it as a way to serve. Like we believe, like I am a very I want the government, like the state, to function well.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's-
And the state, like I studied in the public education system. With all of its flaws, our system works. It's clearly flawed, but it still gives people a good opportunity, and we need to preserve it. So that's how I see. Which is like what I like internally our mission is to make corruption a little bit harder.
Okay.
Yeah, just stealing money, public funds, a little bit harder. Sorry, I've been talking a lot.
That's all good. And now, since you're in tech,
Yeah.
there's a lot of software engineers who are probably trying to do freelance work or maybe getting into startups or working abroad or things like that. Uh, Tell me a little bit about what you've seen throughout your years of working as a founder, hiring developers and so on. Scenarios where people are pretty skilled but do not have really good English speaking skills, whereas they're being kept behind in their careers. Have you had any examples like this?
Um, I think that if you're a freelancer, and most of your clients are coming through like these job platforms, you're already at a sort of a disadvantage because it's a buyer's market
Right.
and you're always competing on price.
Right.
Being there helps when you're just getting started, but quickly you realize how much of a bad value prop it is for you. Because if you're bidding on jobs on Upwork, you're bidding on the lowest, that's right. You can build a reputation. I think one way to do is how you differentiate yourself. Because if you're just pitching on your like, oh, I know this framework, I know this language, I know this that, it's pretty tangible. Like it's difficult to compare. Everyone can put, and also you're making a very surface level thing.
Sure.
I think one way you can present is like how you write. That's a facility. Write English.
Okay.
Or like how you present your ideas. How do you? I think it helps beyond a certain point. It helps to be opinionated about things.
What's an example there? Is it how you write your CV or how you write your blog or what does that look like?
I think it's about like how you present yourself in a certain way. Because after you get your first few clients, the chances are you're mostly getting your business through word of mouth.
Reference. Yeah.
And that is going to be very effective, and also that also comes from a trusted. Like you do a good job for someone and they recommend you to someone else. How you get that recommendation is basically whenever you get a job, you don't really go with the flow, do whatever they say. Because most of the time, job is written by a non-technical person.
Right.
They're hiring you not for you to just do the job, but to tell you with your expertise, maybe there's a better way to do it. I think for software engineers, I think more and more, especially with all of these AI tools where anyone can just like put together a very shitty prototype very quickly. Being opinionated and having a point of view around things that you're doing is going to be very helpful. And to do that, you need to have a level of confidence to communicate with people who are not. Like you have to argue with, not argue, but sometimes argue, hold your ground, and that needs to happen in a language like English. So you have to be very confident about standing your ground, right? Sometimes you can say, yes, you have this idea, but the here's why this wouldn't work. Is we'll take this much resources to implement, and then we will have these problems. Here's an easier way to do it. You might not see it as a solution, but since this requires less resources, you should try this out first. Or find out that from my experience, you should do this instead of that. So it's almost like standing your ground, right? You can do that only when you are confident in the way you're communicating with people.
Right.
And it also helps to have a little bit of leverage. So if you're not desperate enough to bid on every single, if you're bidding for projects on up, like those platforms, you're already at a disadvantage because they're competing on price. Competing on price is never a good place to be, because that means they consider you to be a commodity that can be replaced by someone else, which is not a place where you can dictate prices, dictate terms. Not a good place to be.
How about as a form? Like, I mean, you like built multiple companies. You've had to hire people. You've had to raise money. Like, have you had any examples of the skill of English fluency came in very handy for this?
I mean, all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think I would rate myself as a 6 or 7 out of 10 engineer. I probably wouldn't get I'm a good engineer for an early stage startup. I wouldn't make a good engineer at like a large tech company. I'm crafty about how I build things because that's the environment. Like I've worked with early stage startups, right? That's all I have done throughout my life. I've never had like a large company experience. In those scenarios, you can't just be a software engineer. You need to have a lot of other skills. Basically, understand the problem, be close to it. If you're starting your own company, one of the things the way you present yourself is because you're asking people to take a bet on you. It changes when you move along because there's like more proof of you doing right? You're proving yourself over and over again. But at the beginning, especially if you haven't done things in the past, it's more or less a vibe. This person seems smart, even if you're even doing a dev shop, right? Why should I give you our business? Can you present yourself in a certain way? Can you communicate clearly? That's what's important at the beginning because for the first 2 years, it's going to be whatever business is going to be constant interviewing because you have no leverage whatsoever. Every time you start a new thing, that's also going to be the same thing. Because until you have a few customers that you can show for, and you're not desperate financially, you have to sort of play by someone else's rules. But at the very beginning, it's mostly about how you present yourself and having the confidence in the language is communicated. Like the language of business is English, unless you're doing business with China, maybe Middle East, even then it's mostly English. It's going to be English, and having that confidence to speak to clients. If you're raising money for a startup, speaking to investors and presenting in a certain way, and standing your ground. Even if you're pitching to investors, there are going to be people like, "Oh, what you're doing is not going to work," and if you're not confident in the language because you're mostly going to pitch in English. You might have a great response, but don't have the confidence to say that. You're going to be at a disadvantage. Sometimes fighting back helps because that shows that you have a point of view and you're going to defend that. I think that's something that's really underrated, I think. Yeah, but also if you look at people, you can clearly see. I don't know. There have been like studies of people trying to see with Anglican sounding names on CVs and how much people earn.
Okay.
There's been some studies.
So what does that mean?
So if you have like a name like John Smith,
Okay. Right.
People get through like interview process faster.
Right.
I think the similar thing, anecdotally, I think I made a lot more money as a freelancer and like when like the early stages of my career by just speaking a certain way and presenting myself a certain way over people who are probably a lot more experienced and probably smarter than me. It's a bit fucked up, but
Right.
yeah.
Man, that's insane. So, if I were to ask you one final question, what would some advice be maybe to a founder, an engineer, a freelancer, or some individual in tech? What would some advice that you'd share that you really recommend them to consider?
Can I be a bit? Huh. Yeah, I'm going to be a bit contradictory.
Please.
If you're considering starting a company, I would recommend you don't.
Okay.
Honestly, I'm like one of these people who like whenever you see like entrepreneurship programs, I'm like you shouldn't probably do that because I think uh, you have to be okay with not making money for a long period of time. Especially if you don't, if you're just out of university or like just out of school, unless you have the safety net.
Right.
In my case, I was never going to be homeless. I'm never going to. My parents are rich again, but we had a house,
Yep.
and I always can like they would provide for me, right? I didn't have to take care of my family, so that safety net is so underrated. Even now, doing okay, but I'm also starting like a. I've done well in the past, but at the same time, I'm starting something. So that means you have to pay yourself way less than what you make in the free market. I'm paying just a nominal salary just to cover my expenses. You're giving up a lot of these things. Even now, I don't own a home, but I like live in a rented apartment. But I can always, if things go really poorly, I can go trash up my parents' place. That safety net is there. And then you have to be okay with can you take care of yourself if you suddenly get sick? If you have family obligations, all of that, that's a bit difficult. I would say reconsider.
Okay.
But if you're not deterred by that,
Okay.
you're anyway going to do it. And like no one's going to stop you either way. I don't think you need active encouragement, especially if it's like a. I think if you're doing something, go for like a risky, high risk, high reward thing. But most of the time, I think there are people who get stuck in. We all only see the people who actually succeed. Most of the time, we don't see people who have to sort of rebuild their life. I say all of this, and I already like also help people who are like starting out. But it's a you kind of have to hold both ideas together, right? It's just like, do you have? I think, are you going to be homeless if this doesn't work out? Is a good barometer. And also, do you have? And also, I don't think it has like it's a horrendous thing being a founder. You're not you have to care about not only you getting paid, your team getting paid. You have to face constant rejection.
And you get paid last.
You get paid less, and also sometimes you have to put your own money into the business repeatedly, and you have to, especially if you have like a family, that's a big issue. Yeah, but there are ways to de-risk. I think I was. I think I've gotten incredibly lucky throughout the journey. It was a lot of hard work. Like honestly, this is like the most work-life balance I've had because I was not very good at managing my time in my early 20s, and I also didn't have the same level of expertise. So instead of doing A to B, A to Z, I would just like do all of these things and burn out every 3 months. even like last 5 years, I think I'm now better at pacing myself. You work hard, but at the same time, there are a lot of things that are out of your control. And if you're going to start, like, if you still start a company, then you will, like, I'm not gonna be able to tell you. Yeah, you'll be fine.
That's amazing, man. And before wrapping up, one thing I want to mention is the first piece of content was forced to be created by this guy, and I think the first couple of videos that were created in terms of marketing videos were all done by the Pixel 3a that he gave me, and also the first episode of this like podcast was also an idea given by him. So thanks for all the great marketing ideas too.
Yeah, yeah. I don't do very well with content myself, but I can tell. It's easier to tell people than do it yourself.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, Nisal. Thanks for being here, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I think.
Okay, that went well.
Yeah.
I think I did tangents a lot.